Councilman Scaringi. Oh, I don't hear you.
Councilman, how are you? Sorry.
Yeah, but,
City Clerk, Corp Council, are we ready to go?
Yes, and we are live.
Thank you so much. Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Municipal and Public Affairs Committee for the City Council of the City of Binghamton, April 4th at 7:49 p.m. Post the Monday work session meeting. I'd ask everyone to please stand with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
and
with
and
justice.
justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. The clerk will please call the roll.
Do I do the whole roll call or just the three that are in it?
Just the committee members. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Scaringi,
Present.
Councilwoman Rezanetti,
Present.
and Councilwoman Riley.
Present.
All right, all three here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for everyone who's joining, both members of and not of the committee, of MPA, rather, I should say. I know obviously on our agenda, we had a pretty clear single agenda item, which was to continue our code enforcement discussions that we had started in prior work sessions. So I just wanted to break this down just so we can kind of get some efficiency here as well as keep ourselves moving. My council colleagues will note that I sent everyone earlier a full updated list with all of the discussion items that we've been talking about, as well as a number of members that provided some links and some additional issues that they wanted added. So I appreciate everyone who brought that stuff forward. I'm pretty sure I got everything on the list. If I missed anything, please feel free to let me know or shoot me an email. I apologize about that. That was not meant to be malicious. I think I got everything, and I think we should be good to go there. So I think moving forward, to both be expeditious but in depth, I think there's a couple of things that we need to be mindful of, which is, again, broad goals of the purpose of this, as well as to ensure that we're going way more than just 1 inch deep and actually coming up with some substance. So in theory, if we keep adding things to a list over and over and over again, this process never ends, which by definition doesn't get us to our goal, which is to actually come up with a list of, at a bare minimum, majority supported council proposals to work with Mayor Cram and the mayor's office to bring to fruition. Obviously, this is our side of the house, if you will, within City Hall, and we want to get these done well. So considering that this bullet point list that we have right now, I think is up to 22 or 23 things, I'm going to propose that we move forward, again, just procedurally in the following areas. What I've done is I've taken the aggregate list and I've broken it down, which I'm going to share, obviously, with all of my colleagues, into 5 broad categories. And I think that will allow us to kind of simplify the discussion and move things forward. So just so everyone knows, for public consumption, in the aggregate, we have, as council members, we have talked to our constituents, we have brought things to the table, we have talked during council meetings, we decided to elevate the importance of this by reestablishing this and putting this in the MPA committee so that we can actually have some genuine focused discussion on this. In addition, I believe it was yesterday, we also did receive one letter from a city resident, which offered suggestions, proposals, and thoughts on 4 broad categories, which were with respect to landlord prosecution and creating an attorney position, new code and building inspector, a parks subdivision dealing with property complaints, and grass and wheat height rules. And obviously there were more specifics in there, just giving the broad categories. So the first thing that I will throw out to all of my colleagues were, in the spirit, again, of being expeditious, these are the 5 broad categories that I came up with. And I'd like to A, share these with you, and B, ask any of you to provide any feedback on if you feel any of the micro level bullet points that we aggregated together do not fall under any one of these categories, and does this list need to be amended? So in no particular order, category 1, I'm calling this quality of life issues. This can be anything from grass, garbage, noise, dogs, jaywalking, bicycles on the sidewalk, basketball hoops and other sport-related activities in the middle of the road, so on and so on and so forth. Category 2, broadly calling housing standards and vacant properties. Broad category number 3, code, processes, and procedures, the time, resources, and money related to those processes and procedures. Broad category number 4, slumlords and tenant responsibilities. And broad category number 5, rental registry and code enforcement models. I think if I hit everything, I'm fairly certain, and of course I'm willing to amend any of that, but I'm pretty sure just about every micro level specific bullet point list in some way, shape or form falls under one of those 5 categories. Now, again, as I said earlier, the reason why I came up with these broad 5 categories is I think for conversational purposes, I think it can be very easy to get, quote, if you will, lost in the weeds very quickly in any code related discussion. And so what I'm going to propose is by the end of this week, once we finalize everything as a group together, I am going to send everyone, all of our council colleagues, obviously including all of you, an updated council list with that bullet point list, that micro level list that I've circulated to all of you, and put each of those points within one of those 5 categories. And what I'm going to propose is that after tonight, over the next few weeks, we schedule 2 MPA meetings. In those 2 MPA meetings, we will take 2 larger categories and only discuss those 2 categories at meeting 1, and then the smaller 3 categories at meeting 2. Of course, that could be vice versa. I'm just going in any particular order. Because again, we want to remember that the goal is to actually get some actual local legislation here to better our neighborhoods and better our community. So while our list is not exhaustive, we do have to recognize that we have to come up with a working finalized list as we're moving forward incrementally, step by step, and meeting by meeting. I am all about the fact that this is our list. We can be as slow or as quick as we feel we need to be with this. Remember, again, this is our list. We just want to be very cognizant of the fact that the longer we take, the longer it potentially can get before we actually get something on paper, something actually proposed and potentially maybe even passed into law, as well as the time and resources City Hall is going to need in its respective departments to establish systems and put things into place. So with that being said, I want to thank again all of you for joining myself and obviously all my colleagues. And the first thing I will throw out to all of my colleagues is there anything that anyone feels that any of these broad categories does not cover? Anything that I might have missed, which might entirely be possible?
Council Muscaringi, it's a pretty, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councilwoman
It's a
Resnick.
pretty good list, and I want to thank you for all the work that you have done. Potentially, we could be thinking of something as we go along,
Sure.
but I feel pretty good about this list that we have here in front of us that you sent out to us. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And I think you make a good point, right? The fact that a list is exhaustive, it doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that things aren't going to come up along the way. You're absolutely right about that. And I think we need to be adaptive and we need to be flexible with that. But I think just in a broader sense, we want to make sure that we're hitting the heels to the grindstone and again, being efficient, but also being way more than, if you will, 1 inch deep into the ocean water, actually going in depth, getting some substance, and making sure that we can actually come up with a finalized list that reflects council's thoughts on what we'd like to see with respect to code enforcement in the city of Binghamton. Anyone else? Was there anything on the list that I had circulated to everyone? Did I miss any earlier today? Did I miss any bullet points? Councilwoman Riley, I thank you for the email you sent earlier today. You had provided some links regarding some models and some code enforcement things. I do have that. That was post the email that I sent. However, I did add it already to my list. And when I send out this final list to everyone, please know that those, of course, will be on there.
Well, let me just also clarify. I think
Please.
we kind of define the process by which we will be prioritizing the needs and how we will approach this problem, which is a robust issue. I mean, it's a very big problem with many ways to address, each issue, and it could take us a lifetime. But what I was suggesting was that as we move forward, evidence-based practices always help in defining and shaping and provide a foundation for discussion. So we not only did we receive the email today from a constituent, but we received an email with a proposal, I think 2 weeks ago, from another constituent. I think he emailed us individually and collectively. I can't remember his name, but I think as this becomes more public, we need a process by which we're going to not only receive information from our constituents, as well as bring processes and ideas as council members. And I think in my email today, I made the suggestion that when we make a proposal, or if we come up with an idea, if we have an exemplar or a link to legislation that's in existence or a contact that would be able to tell us how successful that endeavor, that legislation, that change has worked, what happened once it was done in their respective cities, municipalities, or counties, because I think county level today, that would help us. Because I think we do a lot of broad, lofty We have a lot of ideas, but again, I'd hate to ignore an idea because we don't have time to really work it through. But if there is an example, we probably could expedite some of the process and achieve our goals a lot faster.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Councilwoman Riley. Just to follow up with the broad bullet points that you made. Number one, I agree with you. Obviously, an evidence-based approach is always the best way to go. Number two, I'm going to respect the with respect to the other letter from 2 weeks ago that you correctly mentioned. Yes, that was another city resident who submitted that as well, and I know the city clerk's office actually circulated that. I believe the resident emailed all of us, emailed us individually, and then the city clerk's office ensured that it was circulated collectively. I also followed up with that resident to let him know that it was circulated. So yes, you're right about that. And then number three, as it relates to, just the overall process, maybe I do agree with you in the broadest sense that in the end, the easiest way to say this is just, if there's something that works and we want it, if it's already in place somewhere else, there's no point in reinventing the wheel. I agree, absolutely, right? I mean, at the expense of being blunt, that's just ridiculous. I agree, right? If, as long as it obviously can be tailored to our community's needs. And number four, lastly, I would say that I think and something I also agree with you on, I think over the course of our 2 additional meetings after this, where we start getting into micro level and much more specifics, it might entirely be possible, and I'll just use numbers to kind of just illustrate this. They're not substantive, but just, again, illustrative, right? If we have 10 proposals and 5 of them seem to be something that we can do something with them very quickly, we can kind of make this into a 2-step process, right? Where there's a short run period and a long run period. Maybe the short run period is those 5 to 7 things that we can do right now. And then maybe the 2 to 3 other things, maybe that requires some longer discussion that might not just be weeks, but might be months, right? And we can work with council president. Maybe that's going to require additional MPA committee meetings. Maybe that's going to require the full body, whatever that might be. Something where we can go more in depth, give it the time that it is justified, and move at the pace required for it, and then bring it around the ramp, so to speak, at that point. So I agree, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Definitely. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else as it relates to the broad categories or anything like that? Okay. Just from an availability perspective, does this time after a Monday work session, does this work generally well for everyone? Councilwoman Rezanetti, I'm sorry.
I mean, I will make myself available, obviously, whenever it works for most. But I would prefer that it wasn't necessarily after a meeting, only because we don't know how long a work session is going to take. We just don't know. Again, I will make myself available no matter when it's decided that we meet. But I do want us to feel like we have energy. This is very important, right? We're talking about, there's like a long list of things that we need to be talking about. And I just want to make sure that we're all just, it's not necessarily the last thing in our day. I think we can all relate to some extent, right? But again, yeah. So maybe not at the end of the day after another meeting.
We can do it whenever.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much.
I just want to say we could do it whenever. The thought was a different day versus longer time. So
yeah.
I mean, even during the day or at a night, maybe when we don't have a meeting, so it's not back to back. I think it's
right. And our work sessions have been shorter, and then tonight we just don't know how those agendas are going to pile up.
Exactly.
But whatever is best for you guys, we'll tag along and.
Are folks available during the day? I guess it depends, right? And what time and all that, so.
Thank you, Councilwoman Resident. No, I appreciate in my initial discussions with President Strawn and the idea was if it was right after a Monday work session, right, or the few Tuesdays that it falls on, because we're quote unquote already here, it just helped, if you will, with attendance. If we think this needs to go to a different day in the week, starting maybe at like 5:30 or something like that, or 6, I am fine with either one. I think it was just the idea of, again, providing an opportunity for as many people to participate as possible, considering we were already here. But
Makes sense.
yeah, and I appreciate that. But you're absolutely right. Jobs and life and families and especially when you get into the late evenings, I completely understand with that. So if the general consensus seems to be not a work session day, I'm going to assume that also means not a business meeting day. And I was trying to be light on that. I don't know if I pulled that off very well. And then we will go with not a Monday or Wednesday for the future. That's fine. Absolutely. And I can follow up individually, to check in a given week and things like that. That's fine. What I'll probably do is maybe send out a doodle poll to people. And people can punch in their respective availabilities, things like that. So I'd be more than happy to do that. That's fine. Excellent. Is everyone on the same page with respect to, and I will, if I may steal Councilwoman Riley's words, anything that we might consider that might be more short-term related? Do we like the idea of 2 additional MPA meetings, breaking it down by those broader categories, so we have focused conversation, so we can get something? And then if we deem that something is very, like, for example, rental registry and code models, that is important and might be something that might take, understandably, more time to be able to research, discuss, and look at models that might exist in other municipalities or counties across the state. Is everyone okay with that broad flow? Or does anyone have any proposals, any ideas on anything you'd like to change with that?
I think it's a good idea.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything on a substantive level, as we kind of start to hone in here, that anyone would like to add?
You're saying,
I think there was an echo, Councilwoman Freeman. I'm sorry. Like, I could hear you, but it was just echoing. That was I don't know if it was another microphone, like feedback or something.
yeah, is this better? Can you hear me? Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm joining from my phone, but I'm in City Hall right now. So that's what the
No, I
was
like
using-
that you did that, because I can see you close rather than far away on the dais.
Yeah, it's a terrible angle, but but we're gonna let me move this here.
Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to clarify, you are asking specifically about questions or comments related to the rental registry specifically?
No, well, I mean, it could be about that. I was just starting to say, as we kind of got through the nuts and bolts of everything that we were talking about, we seem to be on the same page. I used rental registry and code models, just an example of something that is very in-depth and might fall under the category of longer term rather than shorter term. The last question I had asked was there anything of substance about anything that anyone wanted to add, as we're kind of like wrapping up here? But obviously, if you have something with respect to that subcategory, please feel free to add that.
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, I guess well, actually, I'll hold my comment. So I don't think it's appropriate for this discussion right now. So I'll hang on to it.
No problem. Anything else from anyone? Anything about process moving forward? Notwithstanding that, I'm sure I can echo the sentiment of all my colleagues that very excited to actually get some locked in meetings over the next few weeks and actually start talking about some substance and some actual stuff. Councilwoman Riley, please.
Yes, I'm sorry. You know what? I have been looking at the list that I drafted from your verbal,
Sure.
your
Broad categories.
Yes.
Yep.
Mhm.
Sure.
Number 4, slumlords and tenant responsibilities. I'm a little bit, I know we're not going to type this up and post this anywhere, but
Sure.
terminology for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason I say this, I know we do know slumlords, but where are we going to speak to the owner occupied owner responsibilities as well, opposed to slumlord tenant and just a regular?
No. So for what it's worth, right? I think we just both proved to each other, Councilwoman Riley, that verbiage matters, right? So for what it's worth, this is just my own personal, I don't know if there's right or wrong. I would tend to think that if a property is owner occupied
Mhm.
and the owner occupant is doing a good job with their property,
What
by
if they're-
definition, we're not talking about them.
but what if they're not?
If they're not, if it's owner occupied, then to me, you're a slumlord.
Oh,
So I kind of, right, because, well, think about it, right? I mean, let's just call, and this is what I've heard from tenants, and as from residents, forgive me, because there are a lot of properties in the city of Binghamton that simultaneously have renter tenants and are also owner occupied and have a lot of code issues.
mhm.
So I think the problem is we tend to think the term slumlord means someone away from the property. And the reality of it is a slumlord could, technically speaking, be any landlord who's not doing their job, including someone who lives on the property. So
What
while I
about a
don't,
single family unit with Miss Smith who broke her hip? And it has now, she's in there, she has nurses, but they can't maintain it. Where would she fall in this, in this group, this listing?
a property owner who is not maliciously able to keep
Exactly.
up with
She's
it.
just negligent. And we may not know the reasons why.
Right. That's a fair point. That's a fair point. I would say that would probably fall under housing standards, right? That would seem to me. That would seem to me. So again, I agree, right? On a substantive level, these are going to be the things that we want to, right, identify, iron out, and absolutely, which is why, again, going back to category 4, when I said slumlord and tenant responsibility, meaning landlords have responsibility to their tenants, whether they're residents on or off-site, but rental tenants also have responsibilities to their property owner and their neighbors and their neighborhood, right? So it's a big, huge, important circle, that obviously moves in that manner. So I'm not obviously sold on if anybody has a different title that you would prefer, I'm okay with that. These were just the one. Remember, again, this is our list.
Okay.
This was what I came up with, but this is not final stamped language. And again, like Councilwoman Riley said, it's official in the sense that we're talking about it, but it's not formal in the sense that It's not something that's posted anywhere. So again, this is our list. I want it to be something that we all can accept. So again, if anybody has any proposals on anything you'd like to see changed, I'm fine with that.
Perfect.
Thank you, Councilman Squingy.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rosanelli. Anything else from anyone? Excellent. Well, if there is nothing else, I think we have a paved path where again, substance is really going to be the key. I'm really looking to get, I really hate to say it like this, but again, another bad joke that's going to go over really bad. I'm really looking forward to getting in the weeds with all of you on this. And yeah, that's why I am not a comedian. Not bad dad jokes for a guy that's not married and has no kids. And
I think they're very funny. I think they're very funny.
bless you, Councilman Burns. Bless you.
You're hilarious. It's all good.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm completely analytical. I do not have one creative bone in my body. So with that being said, since there's nothing else, I'll take a motion.
Wait.
Oh, go ahead.
Wait, I know.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Ryan.
So before we set another meeting,
Sure.
what are our actionables? Are we doing that via email? Because we could use this time in between setting the next meeting to either think about how we want to prioritize the two larger sections, what we believe are the two larger sections. There's some things we can be doing in the meantime until that meeting occurs, particularly again, as the visibility of this effort increases and we're getting more information from constituents and the like. So,
that's fine. So just so you know, my process was going to be on the principle that number of categories does not correlate to number of bullets in category. So for example, category 1 can have 2 things in it. Category 5 can have 30 things in it.
of course.
Yeah, my methodology was literally going to be nothing more than to break the categories up across the 2 meetings. So the number of bullets was approximately as equal as possible. If somebody has another method that you would like to use, I'm fine with doing that. That was the reason why I didn't bring that up, because again, that was my methodology. But if somebody has another way that they'd like to do it, I'm open to that too.
Are 2 meetings enough? So if we start that first meeting, we don't want to just, we better hurry quick because we're not at the end of that section yet. Can we just say, okay, we've gone an hour or hour and 15, let's reconvene and pick up where we left off and then move on to there that way?
No, Councilman Burns, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I agree with you, as I stated earlier, and I apologize if I missed or my microphone was off. But again, at the end of the day, this is our list, right? And at the end of the day, we can be as slow or as quick as we need to be with this. I want to try and balance time that we put into this substantively with not actually having 6 months go by and we still don't have a short-term list. But in principle, Councilman Burns, I couldn't agree with you more. We will absolutely take the time necessary that we feel is necessary. Absolutely. And if that means we add a 3rd meeting or even a 4th, then that is not an issue in my opinion. I agree.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Freeman, my apologies.
Oh, no problem. So I might offer this as a potential action item for us to do for the next meeting. I know some of the issues that we brought up have, like Councilwoman Riley mentioned, have exemplars or other municipalities that have implemented similar proposals. I wonder if maybe what we could do is for the bullet points that we each suggested for the next meeting, when it's appropriate, we could bring or maybe send preemptively an example of like the actual legislation that another city has or county has implemented. And I think that way might help to like we've been saying, expedite the process because theoretically, and I'm saying, that's a big if, but theoretically it could be relatively quickly retrofitted to what we need. Again, it's a big, big theoretically, but if the bones are already there, that could be a way that we can sort of get things going. If, let's say, we all read it and we decide that, okay, this would be an appropriate fit for the city of Binghamton, let's work with Corporation Counsel and the commissioner of the code department, Chris Schleider, to just kind of quickly like put a piece of legislation forward.
And thank you for sharing that. In the broadest sense, Councilwoman, I don't disagree. I think you make a very good point, right? And so, as Councilman Burns alluded to, whether it's 2 or 3 meetings, or again, whatever n number of meetings it is, my just broad suggestion would be that, quote unquote, in the off time in between meetings, because you will obviously, for me as chair, you will have dates correlated with substantive discussion topics from the very, very beginning. So, for example, if, I don't know, dogs was at meeting 3 and meeting 3 isn't for 6 weeks from now, that's 5 weeks and 6 days that you can do any research that you think is relevant. Reach out to me if I can help, or sister, we can work together, and we could actually come to that meeting with saying, hey, I found this from municipality X. This might be a good idea. And then we can take it from there, send it through the appropriate channels, Corp Counsel, Code Enforcement Department, and move from there. Yes.
So I'm taking this from a qual analysis perspective. We have our themes. So now we're going to go back and qualitative research.
Right.
So we have our themes, right? We're one research group. We're going to take the sub content areas and group them into these themes, then rank them, prioritize them in terms of what we all, and I know we're doing this individually. Let's think if we were in a research or even a strategic planning, we all put our little yellow or pink dots by what we think, because we have to come together, and maybe we do it via a Google Doc. Because again, if we categorize the sub bullets that were submitted differently, then we may not prioritize them and effectively manage them in the meeting. So that's what I'm thinking we can do in between time. Does that make sense?
Sure, like a rank order system. Definitely.
Absolutely. And even if we go down to the basic, you have it on a piece of paper. Here's SR for Sophia Resnieri, AR for Angela Riley, by each one that we agree with. And then the one that has the most votes will move to the top.
Sure, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. Yeah.
Okay. Just so we come in and we're thinking about it as a team, and then we're ready to attack it based upon not only our own personal perception, but what we've collected from our constituents. Because someone may prioritize the dog issue, but again, when it's up for vote amongst all of us, we may see that it's not as high of a priority compared to rental registry, right? Okay.
Sure. I don't have a problem with that. Councilwoman Freeman.
So just to add to that, I'm wondering, is it possible to have an interactive digital document where we could do this? Like I know we don't use Google or Gmail for the city, but some kind of like Jamboard or something where we can interact with it.
I appreciate the question. I'm going to be very honest with you. There is one thing more that there's only one thing in this world that I can't stand more than repeating email conversations with 7,000 reply alls, and that is a Google document. I hate Google Drive more than anything. At least for the fact that Google doesn't care about my privacy, but I don't think it's very robust. I do agree with you, Councilwoman. I think you're right. If there's definitely got to be some sort of technological element that we can use to guide, like, for example, Doodle with the availability. If you're okay with it, Councilwoman, maybe give me a day or so just to kind of mull that over in my head, and and then and then we can aggregate that together. But in principle, I do agree with what you and Councilwoman Riley are saying. These are logistical things that, which again was, as I had mentioned earlier, was my process and my thought that we can do in between meetings, so that way when we get to meeting time, we're hyper focused on substance. I think that will yield us the best result in the most expeditious, time sensitive manner, and allow us, again, as I was saying earlier, to go way more than an inch deep.
I'm happy to do some research to send to you as someone who has been providing digital or like virtual education in my full-time job. I have had some experience with like interactive digital documents, so I'm happy to take that on as an action item for myself. And I promise it won't be a Google Doc, but it might be just something where we can like all
Sure.
virtually interact with it, and I'll
Yeah,
send that along for
absolutely.
your approval.
No. I mean, again, this is all group related decisions. I'm just a guide here as chair. But I mean, if you have any suggestions along the way, please feel free to send them. I have no problem with that, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Anything else, colleagues? Anything else, Mr. President?
I just wanted to say the word's definitely getting out. Councilman Burns and I had a good meeting on Wednesday with the Southside Neighborhood Assembly. Went over a bunch of this stuff, and I see we still got Vaughn and a couple other people are still on the call. So I think this will be a good process, and we are starting to gain, gain notice from multiple directions that we're looking at this. So I'm looking forward to the process.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. As a complete aside, I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed this over the evolution of sending you this micro level bulleted list. I was selfishly on my own end, just keeping my own bullet list in a separate notepad on my phone. And when I added all of those bullet points from things that I was hearing from constituents, I think it's my fault. I think I kind of doubled the size of our aggregate list. And I know I've heard from a lot of you similar things along those bullet points as well. I actually have been getting phone calls and emails about this saying, this is really good news. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Could this be added to the list? So yeah, I agree. Definitely. And I know I've heard from colleagues as well, the same thing. So, but I appreciate you sharing that. Colleagues, anything else? All right, colleagues, thank you so much. Thank you, Corp Counsel. Thank you, Madam Clerk. That being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilman Scaringi.
Second.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilwoman Burns. Motion by Councilwoman Resonetti, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. All's in favor? The ayes have it. Have a good night, everyone.
All right,
Good night.
thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you all.
Good
Good
night.
night. Thank you again. Bye-bye.